former President Donald Trump delivered a speech that quickly became the subject of controversy at the memorial service for conservative activist Charlie Kirk. What many expected to be a solemn occasion to honor the life and influence of Kirk turned into a moment that sparked sharp reactions across political and media circles. The speech, stretching well beyond its scheduled time, was criticized for straying from remembrance into a mixture of campaign-style rhetoric, personal grievances, and meandering commentary that many attendees found inappropriate for the occasion. The memorial drew hundreds of Kirk supporters, colleagues, and public figures who gathered to celebrate his contributions to conservative youth movements. Expectations were high that Trump, who had worked closely with Kirk over the years, would deliver a message of respect and reflection. Instead, observers noted that Trump spent a significant portion of the speech speaking about his own political battles, election controversies, and criticisms of the media. At several points, he shifted into his familiar cadence of rally-style delivery, raising his voice and gesturing dramatically, which stood in contrast to the quiet, somber atmosphere that had defined much of the event until that point. People inside the venue later described the mood as uneasy. Several attendees said that the speech initially began with remarks about Kirk's energy, vision, and work with Turning Point USA, the organization he founded to mobilize young conservatives. However, as the minutes passed, the focus drifted further away from Kirk's life and accomplishments. Trump spoke about border policy, economic decline, and what he described as political persecution against himself. The audience seemed torn, with some applauding at familiar lines and others looking uncomfortable with the diversion from the intended purpose of the gathering. Political analysts observing the speech noted that Trump appeared unable to separate his role as a political figure from his role as a guest speaker at a memorial. Commentators on cable news later highlighted how unusual it was for a former president to approach such a setting with campaign language. Critics said that his remarks overshadowed the memory of Kirk and turned the event into what felt like a political rally. Supporters of Trump defended him by arguing that his approach reflected authenticity and that his comments about the state of the nation were in line with what Kirk himself would have wanted highlighted. Kirk, who passed away unexpectedly, had built a reputation as one of the most influential conservative voices among younger generations. His speeches and organizing efforts had drawn thousands of students to conservative events across the country. For many in attendance, the memorial was meant to be a moment of unity and tribute. Friends of Kirk who took the stage before Trump shared stories of his early life, his relentless work ethic, and his ability to inspire young people to engage in politics. They spoke with warmth, laughter, and tears. By the time Trump began, the room was emotionally heavy yet appreciative of the shared memories. The speech lasted over an hour, nearly double the planned length. According to those present, Trump repeatedly circled back to his claims of being unfairly treated by prosecutors and the press. He also made comparisons between Kirk's fight against liberal ideology on campuses and his own struggles against what he called a corrupt political system. While some of Kirk's closest allies nodded in agreement, others whispered among themselves that the focus was drifting too far away from the man they had come to honor. Journalists covering the event reported that several attendees quietly left during the speech, while others stayed but refrained from clapping. Social media reactions poured in immediately, with clips spreading quickly on platforms like X and YouTube. Pundits across the political spectrum reacted with sharp commentary. Progressives criticized Trump for what they described as disrespectful self-indulgence at a solemn event. Some conservatives, including allies of Kirk, admitted publicly that they were disappointed in the tone of the remarks. Even among Trump loyalists, the speech raised questions about strategy. Some wondered if the moment would have been better served by a shorter, more heartfelt reflection on Kirk's legacy. Instead, the former president's comments risked alienating those who were there primarily to mourn and remember. Political strategists later said that the speech could be remembered not for honoring Kirk but for showcasing once again Trump's inability to stay within traditional boundaries of decorum. In the days following, major news outlets dedicated segments to the fallout. Newspapers ran op-eds questioning the judgment of using such an occasion to deliver partisan talking points. Editorial boards debated whether this was simply another example of Trump's style or a new low in terms of political performance. Conservative media faced its own divide, with some hosts defending Trump by saying that his blunt style reflected authenticity, while others lamented that he missed an opportunity to unify people in grief. Family members of Kirk released a brief statement thanking all who attended and expressing gratitude for the support. They did not mention Trump's remarks directly, but insiders suggested that they were privately frustrated by how the speech shifted the focus away from Kirk. Friends of the late activist emphasized that Kirk himself had often spoken about the importance of honoring individuals for their work and legacy rather than making every moment about politics. The controversy added to an already tense atmosphere in national politics. Trump continues to dominate headlines as he prepares for another presidential campaign while facing ongoing legal challenges. Every public appearance he makes is closely scrutinized, and the memorial speech was no exception. Opponents used it to highlight what they called his lack of empathy, while allies doubled down on portraying him as a truth-teller who refuses to conform to political norms. Observers pointed out that Trump has long blurred the lines between political events and personal occasions. From weddings to fundraisers, he has a history of inserting political themes into settings where others might choose restraint. In this case, the stakes felt higher because the memorial was meant to honor someone who had built his life around serving a political movement. Still, the decision to focus so heavily on himself rather than the deceased was seen by many as inappropriate. For the wider conservative movement, the incident raised uncomfortable questions. Kirk had been a bridge between younger voters and the larger Republican establishment. His ability to communicate with energy and charisma helped keep momentum among younger activists. Trump's speech, instead of celebrating that legacy, risked creating division. Some feared that the distraction might undercut efforts to preserve Kirk's work and inspire others to carry it forward. The long-term impact of the speech remains uncertain. Some predict that it will be remembered as one of the more tone-deaf moments of Trump's public career, while others believe that his base will see it as yet another example of his refusal to bow to convention. What is clear is that the memorial will not be remembered solely as a tribute to Kirk but also as a moment when Trump's presence sparked a national conversation about respect, decorum, and political culture. As days passed, the debate showed no signs of fading. Editorial pages revisited the event, talk shows replayed clips, and commentators analyzed every phrase. Pollsters began asking questions about whether the speech changed perceptions of Trump's empathy and leadership. Early indications suggested that while his core supporters remained unshaken, independents and moderates expressed disapproval. For families grieving Kirk, the political storm added to their pain, overshadowing the mourning process with a swirl of commentary and judgment. In conversations with reporters, attendees described a feeling of dissonance. One attendee said that it felt like two different events stitched together, the first half filled with heartfelt tributes and the second half consumed by Trump's grievances. Another said that they had come expecting unity and instead left with a sense of division. Others, however, insisted that Trump's passion and willingness to speak about national issues was in fact a fitting tribute to Kirk's combative spirit. The contrast between these reactions revealed a broader truth about American politics in this moment. Even in death, even in spaces designed for reflection and respect, the dividing lines of politics cut through. The memorial for Charlie Kirk, meant to unite friends, family, and supporters, became another stage for partisan struggle. And Trump, as he has throughout his career, stood at the center of that struggle, drawing attention, criticism, and loyalty in equal measure. As more details surfaced, accounts differed slightly on the atmosphere inside the hall. Some described awkward silences, while others said there was intermittent applause. But nearly all agreed that the tone of the room shifted dramatically once Trump moved away from honoring Kirk and began focusing on his own battles. The pacing, the repetition of familiar talking points, and the length of the speech all contributed to what many called a hijacking of the memorial's purpose.